welcome to another video from You First, High Impact Training. My name's Sarah and I'm really happy to be here with you today to talk about problem solving. The objectives of today's sessions are to understand what is problem solving and how can it be applied to your everyday life. To also understand an approach to problem solving, so we're going to give you a process that you can perhaps follow, and then some of the practical challenges that you may face when problem solving. These three topics will be covered in turn: problem solving explained, the problem solving process, and how problem solving works or doesn't work sometimes in practice. So let's jump right in there. Problem solving explained. What is problem solving? Well, at its very core, problem solving is a way of finding a solution, right? Now, this usually applies to really difficult or complex situations, but there are a lot of words associated with here of problem solving, like creativity, thinking outside the box, innovation, brainstorming, and analysis. Now, all of these things usually come together to create really, really effective problem solving, and they're often used to define what problem solving is. So, how do you approach problems? Do you have a process that you follow or a method when you're given a really complex process? Well, we're going to give you one right now. The first step here, we've got 7 steps. Now, the first step is to really identify the problem area. Depending on the information that you actually have, you may not really understand too much about the problem, but you certainly want to understand what area in it. Is it in a, for example, a geographical area? Does this problem only relate to one country, for example? Or is it across multiple countries, multiple cultures, multiple types of people? So with this information and having understanding the area that the problem falls in, you really want to understand what are some of the facts here. So this fact-finding part is really important in terms of gathering as many facts as you possibly can. With these facts, you're now equipped to really define the problem. Now, what we normally talk about here is actually writing a problem statement. So it's a very succinct, concise summary of what the problem is that's quite descriptive. And here's the fun part. Having understood the problem, now you can actually start to generate ideas. Now, importantly, these ideas are not solely the solution, but what you want to start to do is really start to generate any kind of ideas. Here's where we really think outside the box. We start to do brainstorming. You might get a whiteboard out there and really just start to think about, okay, now that we understand this problem, what are some possible solutions or even just ideas that get us close to a solution? And from this process, you can then start to prioritize and organize these ideas so that you've got some real solutions. And the top solution is obviously the one you're going to go with. From here, quite obviously, you want to implement the ideas. Now, this might be on a trial basis, or it might be across, for example, an entire organization. But really, you want to start to roll out so you can see in practice, is this solution actually working? Now, this ties into the final part of the process here, step number 7, which is really about reflecting on what you've done and asking yourself, where are the areas where we can improve? And do we need to actually intervene to improve the solution that we actually implemented? So here you have a 7-step process for how you can manage really complex issues. Now let's look at, in practice, what are some of the challenges that you may find? Well, the first of which we've seen all the time, is creativity blockages. This is when people feel like they don't have the capability, or as the point says, the creativity to come up with solutions to what appear to be really complex problems. Now, here's when you really want to use the process that we just went through, because by breaking down a very complex process and problem, you basically give yourself time and structure to really draw out these creativity aspects and ultimately to draw out the solution. The second common challenge we see is hierarchy and a culture in organizations whereby a leader or a manager comes up with an idea and everyone just follows that idea in terms of solving the problem. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It might be a great idea, but the point is, unless you have a culture where you can really go through the process of looking at different ideas and really trying to brainstorm possible solutions, you may miss the optimal solution to your problem. Time limitations is another very common challenge we see. So you've got a very complex problem to solve within a day. Now, ideally, you would run the process that we just went through over a period of time, perhaps a week, 2 weeks. But if you've got very tight time frames, we still recommend that you follow some kind of process, but it might just be very limited. But as long as you have the process in place, you can basically mobilize people to get together to run some very rapid brainstorming type processes to come up with the ideal solution. Now, this one is important: solution before the problem. What we're talking about here is that people are often faced with complex problems, and naturally, almost, particularly if we're very strategic thinkers, we will jump to a solution. Again, there's not necessarily anything wrong with this, but if you haven't properly defined the problem, you remember those first couple of steps in the process, and you don't have any facts to do with the problem, you may jump to a solution and it might not be the most appropriate solution for that particular problem. And finally, personal bias. Now, this is both a positive and a negative in some ways, because we all bring our experience and we all bring our perspectives to solve problems, which is really important for the problem-solving process. However, if you have a very strong bias towards certain things in life, you may bring that into the process and it may distort your ability to really open your mind, think outside the box, come up with innovative ideas. So what we tell people is try to put any kind of bias you have aside so that you can go through the problem-solving process and really come up with a great solution. So what we recommend are some key principles around problem solving. Now, these are: groups are usually better than one. As we discussed, and the second point here, diversity, it's really important to have a group situation where you have different experiences, ideas, so that you can really start to challenge some of the ideas. This diversity point is quite important. This is talking about diverse professional backgrounds, personalities, and then you really will find that you'll come up with a really rich solution. Open-mindedness. One of the key principles of problem solving is to remain open-minded. If you're not open-minded, if you're going to do, for example, the same thing that you've always done to solve a problem, then you won't really reach those levels of innovation that a lot of companies are looking for nowadays. A challenge mindset. Now, we've just mentioned this, but this is really about having a look at some of the solutions to problems and asking yourselves, is this really the most appropriate solution? Is this something that's going to work? And really think through in a challenge mindset. And finally, learning orientation, which relates to the final step of the process, whereby you don't just implement something and let it go. You look at both your problem-solving process and the solution that you came up with to understand, did the problem-solving process go well, and where can we improve on this? And how was our solution? Did the solution work? Gain feedback on that. Well, that's all we've got today on problem solving. Thank you so much for joining us. We really hope this training's been beneficial for you, and we wish you all the success in the future. Thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.